Is it better to be feared
or respected? And I say, is it too much to ask for both?
You have seen these scenes in some of the biggest movies in the world, but they weren't shot in Hollywood. They were shot right out here at Cerro Gordo, the abandoned mining town I live in and the surrounding hills. This area has been the go-to area for filmmakers since the 1920s to shoot blockbusters with everybody from John Wayne, Gene Autry, Robert Downey Jr., Jamie Foxx, Russell Crowe, and so many more. And so often in these videos, I talk about the rich mining history here at Cerro Gordo. But in this video, we are going to talk about the rich filming history. We are going to track down some of these locations where the scenes were shot and learn why this area has been the go-to area to shoot movies that have produced billions of dollars in the box office. So the first location isn't actually that big of a trek because it is right here at my house where I sleep every single night. And off of this porch, a movie called Waterhole #3 was shot. It was a 1966 Western with James Coburn, and it was kind of trying to be a comedic remake of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I don't know necessarily if they accomplished that, but the whole intro sequence that you see in that movie is them slowly climbing up Cerro Gordo Road, different shots along the way, and at the end, the shot that they have is right in here, and they look down the road from about there, they pan, and you see the general store, which at the time didn't have the tree nor the deck, but that was kind of the pan from there into the road. And what's funny is in that, I was looking the other day, and right around here, they have what looks to be like a snowshoe blocking part of the view. It's kind of like this, the blocking the view. And that snowshoe is actually right here. So if we really wanted to recreate this scene, I would hang the snowshoe somewhere like this, and then we'd have a very similar shot to what they had in 1966. And so for me, I mean, that adds really cool context to the house. You know, I live here every single day. I walk on this porch every day, and I never knew that, you know, James Coburn, a pretty well-known star in his day, shot a movie up here. It's just very cool. And I think this whole journey today is hopefully going to provide more context to the area that I live in, and just make the experience of living up here a little bit richer. You know, I'm gonna go by scenes that probably I passed by before and now know more history of them. And that's probably my favorite thing in the world. And so now that we've gotten this first location, that was pretty easy admittedly, we are going to head down the road where a huge franchise was shot, not even 2 miles from here. But before we get to the billion-dollar franchise, we are going to spend a little bit of time where the King of Cool once shot a movie. So it's just about right here, where in 1966, Steve McQueen was mourning his parents' death in the movie Nevada Smith. In the movie, McQueen plays a character called Max Sand, and Max is a young guy working down in the valley at a ranch, and his dad had taken up an old mining claim up in the hills to try to give it a go. And Max is working down there, some guys come along, they say, "Hey, do you know where so-and-so is?" He says, "Yeah, actually, that's my dad. You know, go a couple canyons up, turn left, and you can't miss him." And so the guys are coming up here, not just to say hi, but to rob Max's dad, because they think that Max's dad has a huge gold hit up here in this mine. And when they find out that he doesn't have any gold, they brutally kill Max's mom and his dad. And Max McQueen down in the valley gets kind of a bad feeling about all this. So he rides up, you can see his horse come right around the turn behind me, right in front of this mine shaft, and he sees a family friend, and I think the realization strikes that his parents are dead. And so he walks right towards in front of me, into his parents' house. He sees them brutally murdered, and he thinks, I don't want anybody seeing this way. So he ends up lighting fire to the house, watching it burn, and eventually taking a hike out of here that way. And in reality, the mine that you see behind me is called the Estelle mine. And the building that would have been burned down wasn't originally there, but you can actually still see some of the charred pieces. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna walk back towards the mine, take a peek in there, give you a little bit of history, and then we're gonna see some of the remnants of the movie that are still possible to see. So this mine that in the movie was Max Sand's dad is actually called the Estelle Tunnel. And it was originally started in 1908 by a company called the Estelle Mining Company, and it continued being made all the way into 1923. And the goal of this tunnel was to intersect the lower levels of Cerro Gordo's mines, which were 900 feet underground, to save them on the transportation halfway down the mountain. And about a mile and a half into this mine, the company actually did hit silver. And so they pushed some drifts, they put some workings, 300 feet above, 300 feet below. And there's a big controversy on whether this mine ever intersected Cerro Gordo's mine, because if they had intersected 900 foot level, that would have saved them the transportation cost halfway down the road. And I have to call a little bit of a potential there, because I have seen a map that shows it getting very, very close. And so whether the fact or not that they did intersect is the topic of a different video, but this is the mine that apparently McQueen's parents were mining in Nevada Smith. And it's still here, and you can still visit it. It's called the Estelle Tunnel, and I'll put the coordinates on. But with that, I think we should turn around and take a look at where Max's parents met their fate. And right out here, there's a shot of McQueen mourning his parents' house. And the house is positioned right there, and it burned down. And what's cool is if you go out here and you look around, you can still see some of the charred embers and the discoloration because of the burn, and even some old timbers, that are charred up from that day. And so the thought that this was such an important scene, such an important movie from the guy that was considered probably the most famous actor in the world in his day was shooting right here. And that's very cool to think that he spent a little time here right along my road. And at the end of it, you see McQueen is riding off on a difficult trail over there just past my truck, and he wanders down. And what's interesting is not even a mile from here, just down this valley a little bit along that road, is the start of a billion-dollar franchise that would come about 45 years later, and one that probably most of you will know, but probably won't know where it was shot. And so we're gonna go down there and check that out next. Right here, right in that spot, that is where billionaire genius Tony Stark was held against his will by some Afghani captors and forced to make a rocket. But instead of making the rocket, Tony Stark, aka Robert Downey Jr., made an Iron Man suit and displayed it on film for the first time ever right there. And you can tell that the cave itself was a set that they built into the hillside right here. But these are the formations of rocks around it, and the road, they added tents around the sides of the road. So this looked like a main street or something of a town or a camp. But in reality, this is a part of the road that I'll call the Narrows, and I've had huge washouts over the year because the water just flows through here. This is a corner that I drive by almost every day. It's caused me huge headaches, and I never took the time to realize that right there was the beginning of the Ironman sequence. It had been a cartoon ahead of time, but the first Ironman, the first time that suit is ever revealed, happens from this perspective right there. There's a shot where they kind of go up here and they pan down like this, and they show the cave, and then there's tents, and you have the mesh over this. And after he gets out, they start fighting along this. So I'm gonna climb down from here. All right, so right here is where the cave was built. And there's a shot, once he comes out, he's fire blazing out of the front of the suit. And there's a shot down this road this way of some guys coming up the road with guns, and they're kind of coming to fight him. And so you'll see one shot here where they're coming up the road fighting him, and there's a shot they kind of pan like this, and you can't see much, it's kind of zoomed in on his face, but you see that ridge behind there. So the distinguished little knob there and there. And so you can see one shot this way when they're showing him in profile, one shot down here when they're fighting them. And again, this whole hill had been built up with nets to make it look like a camp. But right here, this is where Ironman, as seen for the first time on the big screen, took place. And it's crazy to think that, again, I drive by this every day, and if you go watch these videos, you know that this area I've spent probably the most amount of time ever, because when the rains come, all this dirt gets washed away, and I've spent a long time with a backhoe right here rebuilding and rebuilding and rebuilding. But you know, I never took the time to realize that right here was the bunker that old Tony Stark was in, and that's awesome. And I hope you guys come check it out. It's on the way up to Cerro Gordo, so if you want to check it out. And with that, you know, we've been talking a lot, and in a lot of these shots, just over the cliff, what you'll see is the dry lake bed of Owens Lake. And Owens Lake has a very storied history. It also has a very storied film history. So we're gonna go down the road a little bit longer, talk about the next stop, a fan favorite that I think a lot of you guys are gonna know. All right, so we are getting further down the road, and you're seeing more and more of this dry lake bed. And that dry lake bed is Owens Lake. The reason that Los Angeles has drinking water, a deathbed courtesy of William Mulholland. I could rant and rave for a very long time about the history of Owens Lake. I will save that for another video as well. But if you're interested in kind of the origins of the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power and kind of some of the corruptness, you should definitely check out Chinatown with Jack Nicholson. That is a great fictionalized version of the origins of DWP, but I think that still rings true today. But a dry lake bed is a great set for different movies, and one movie in particular, you see this in the background a few times, and that is Tremors, the 1990 movie with Kevin Bacon, Fred Ward, and even Reba McEntire, the country star, in her very first role ever in a movie. And Tremors is about these giant worm-like creatures that live underground, burrow around and eat people from below and pull them underneath the ground, and eventually you have to jump from rock to rock to avoid them. And Tremors is a very fun movie, a very cult-like following for a movie, and a lot of it is shot in and around here. You can see Owens Lake a lot. The place that it is set is a place called Perfection. It says Perfection, Nevada, but it's actually shot right by Owens Lake. So our first stop in this adventure into Tremors is going to be to Perfection, where it all went down. But keep an eye out in movies. You're going to see this in a lot of places. A little bonus detour on the way to Perfection. This is the Olancha Dunes, and in Ironman, when he blasts out of the cave, he takes off in the air. Eventually his rockets give out and he plops right down into a desert, and that desert is right over there. I can tell that because of the scenes and the visibility of Owens Lake behind it. I'm gonna throw up the drone and show you guys a better perspective of exactly the shot, but I kind of just put together on the drive over here that this was it. And so I'm gonna throw up the drone, but again, this is where Tony Stark landed before he was picked up by the military helicopters and all that type of stuff. Olancha Dunes, I'll throw the GPS on this as well, and then we're gonna continue our way over to Perfection, where Tremors was. And here we are at the home of Perfection, the main hub for all activities during Tremors, where they're having to get on the roof to avoid the worms, where they're brainstorming when all things were happening. We're out here in the middle of nowhere. And the reality is, I guess like in real life, Perfection doesn't exist. Perfection in Tremors was a movie set. All the buildings were constructed before the movie and were since taken away after the movie. The only thing that remains is the Perfection sign, where they put up a replica so you can still see where Kevin Bacon first made his turn into the town. That's there, but nothing more beyond that. You can see though why it would be a great location to film a very remote town, because there is nothing really out here and it's very pretty if you ask me. So to see more things that are actually still there, we're gonna go a little bit north into the Alabama Hills, where hundreds of movies have been filmed over the year. Some of the most famous movies that have ever come out of the Old West. We're gonna make a quick pit stop along the way at the Film Museum, where there's tons of props from Tremors and a lot of others. And we're actually gonna have a little visit from the Inyo County Film Commissioner to hear a little bit more about the history of films out in this area.
I'm Jesse Steele, I'm the Inyo County Film Commissioner, and we are here at the Lone Pine Western Film Museum. It's one of the coolest places in the world, honestly. All the different movies that have been shot here in Inyo County are represented here in some way or another, and it's stuff you wouldn't even imagine. One of the things that's cool about this place is you can't beat our locations. I mean, you all know, you watched the show, it's incredible. You look this way, it's Nevada, you look this way, it's Montana, you look this, so that's why this is so coveted. We've all heard of Foley sound, which is like coconuts, that kind of stuff, you know, like punching glove when somebody gets hit, that kind of stuff, boots walking in sand. So Foley came from a guy named Jack Foley. So Jack Foley, he was born in 1890, somewhere around there in, I believe, Ireland. And so he moved to New York, and he was working in New York, and he decided to get out here because they were sick and tired of that. So he moved to Bishop. He was working in a hardware store, and there was a couple of things that were going wrong with the town, and it had to do with, it was a big part of like the LADWP water grab and all that. There was some stuff they needed money brought in. So he happened to have some contacts in the film industry. So he reached out to them and said, hey, you want the perfect spot where you can shoot these amazing movies? Come up here. So a couple movies, all the silent movies, they would come up here and shoot, and there's a lot of different movies like that. Come to the Lone Pine Western Film Museum, you can see all of this stuff here. And then the talkies started to come out. So the very first one was, there was two that went for it. It was called The Jazz Singer and Showboat. So what the process for the film, or for the audio on that was, they would record the sound on set, and they would record the actors on set, and that's how they were doing it. Well, Jack thought of the idea because he knew these guys were running this. Well, they wanted to beat him because they'd already shot The Jazz Singer with no words, and they wanted to say, no, we're going to beat these guys. This was Universal, so like, we're going to beat these guys. So Jack's idea was, well, why don't we just recreate the sounds by watching it? And so then they did, they beat him to it or whatever, and that's where Foley came from, so Foley sound. So what's cool about that is then he became sort of the golden child. They're like, oh, this is the guy, he knows what he's doing, right? So like, well, what's the next big thing in film, Jack? And Jack's like, Bishop, Lone Pine, Independence here. He's like, if you shoot here, you can shoot all day long. There's nobody to stop you. You can shoot all over the place. Alabama Hills is one of the most recognized places in the whole wide world for shooting films. That was because of that one guy. So they came here in like the 20s, and from then they shot every Western here. Everything was shot here into the 50s and 60s. All the TV shows, Gunsmoke, you know, Have Gun Will Travel, all those, they were all shot here. Most of them. There's all over the place, of course, but this was the main home base for that kind of stuff until the Westerns stopped being popular. And now it's kind of become more of like, I have a lot of car commercials that shoot here. Every Super Bowl commercial you see has a car racing around in the Alabama hills or up against, you know, the different areas. It's been really, really cool. So there's so much like that that goes on around here. Short movies like crazy. This is my favorite room in the place, of course. Sci-fi movies happen a lot. You can see the different posters in here. I mean, I'm just looking around going, you couldn't possibly remember all of this. It's been a couple of years since a big one. I think the last big one might have been The Lone Ranger with Johnny Depp, and that shot on the dry lake. And that was really, really cool. And so it happens a lot. We get it out here, and hey, we're welcoming more. If you guys want to shoot, give me a call. Yeah. You know, my website is filminyocounty.com. If you want to go check that out, all the information for permitting, history of our stuff here, it's all there. And we're super glad to have you.
Welcome to the Alabama Hills, possibly the most famous filming location in Western movie history. 400 or 500 different Westerns were shot in this area right around me. And you may be wondering, hey, you are a pretty long ways from Alabama. Why is this called the Alabama Hills? And that is because back in the 1860s, miners in this area were very sympathetic to the Confederate movements in the Civil War. And there was a warship called the CSS Alabama that was very famous for overtaking the Union fleet. And so a lot of the miners started naming their prospects after the Alabama, and hence the Alabama Hills. And in kind of a twist of fate, that ship sank shortly thereafter. But hey, here we are 150 years later, still calling these the Alabama Hills. And if you can look, you can tell why this is such an interesting filming location. These rocks that are 80 million years old that are rounded contrast the jagged Sierra Nevada in a very interesting way. And so this has been used for Westerns, this has been used for military shots, this has been used for different planet shots and everything in between. And so now that we are here, we're gonna keep looking for these famous filming locations, starting once again with Tremors and a very famous scene where some guys got eaten. So this road that we're on is called Movie Road because of all the movies that have been shot along it. But in addition to all the movies, this is a very popular road for car commercials. There have been countless car commercials shot along Movie Road. I even shot one with Rivian a while back in collaboration with Car and Driver. And so, as you can see, this is a popular location for many reasons, and it's one that's just off 395, so if you have the opportunity, I would definitely take the time, take a little wander through Movie Road. So I've been living out in this area for quite a long time now, and I just love how many things there are to do outdoors. Whether that's hunting down famous filming locations, exploring the abandoned mines, going on multi-day hikes to old ghost towns. I love to do it all. And one thing that I bring with me everywhere these days is Element. This is an electrolyte mix that's just sodium, potassium, and magnesium. That's it. And when I first moved up here, I used to get these crazy dehydration headaches that would basically just incapacitate me for the day. And as soon as I started throwing one of these sticks into my daily routine, those are just gone. I just feel better, I have more energy, and I just don't get those crazy cramps or headaches. And so if you're out there and you ever suffer from dehydration headaches, or just looking for a way to make sure that you stay hydrated day in and day out, check out Element. If you go to drinkelement.com/Brent, so drinkelement.com/Brent, they're giving away a free sample pack with any purchase. These days, they even have a chocolate flavor going on that's really good in the morning with something hot. They still have their classic flavors like the citrus that I'm using right now. But if you check it out, drinkelement.com/Brent, it's amazing, and I highly recommend it. It is right here where 34 years ago, 2 road workers got eaten by a worm. At least that's what happened in Tremors. And Val and Earl, the stars of the show, got real spooked. You know, this is when they first realized the real nefarious nature of these worms. And so this has a lot of Tremors lore happening right at this corner. And right here is the rock Val, Earl, and Rhonda spent the night on. And there's a shot of Kevin Bacon right here kicking off the graboids for the first time. This is when they realized they had to stay on the rocks. So they ended up spending the night here. And pretty much the entire rest of the movie was shot in this surrounding area where I'm standing right now. And if you haven't checked it out, it is a very fun movie. And this is a very beautiful area. So definitely check it out. But if you're a Tremors fan, I've even got the boots on right now. You can probably imagine Kevin Bacon sitting right out here, kicking his boots out, trying to get this thing away from him. It's just a classic scene, and it's funny to even think, I think this bush is exactly where it was 34 years ago or whatever. And with that, we're gonna go just down the road to a little bit less fun of a movie, but a huge blockbuster hit when it came out. The 2012 movie that was shot right here starred Leonardo DiCaprio, Samuel L. Jackson, Jamie Foxx, and it was directed by the infamous Quentin Tarantino. Do you have any guess of what that might be? You can see even in the trailer for this movie, this defining rock right behind me. And that movie, of course, is Django Unchained. And in this scene, Jamie Foxx and some others are being led right down here in shackles right at the very beginning of the movie, all through the Alabama hills. And there's this interview with Tarantino, and he says, you know, he had come out here and just being around these rocks made him remember all of these Western movies from the 1950s, and he really got inspired to want to make a spaghetti Western. And that started here, but ended somewhere very different. And so for our final stop, now that we have seen Django Unchained, we're gonna do a spot that is very infamous for those early 1950s, 1960s movie, and one of the most famous characters from that era. Somebody who I dressed up as many times as a kid during Halloween, and that is going to be our next stop. The Lone Ranger, an enduring icon of the American West with his strict moral code and his friend Tonto, was first portrayed on screen by Lee Powell in 1938 in a scene that originates right here. This is where Powell and his 5 other Texas Rangers were ambushed. This is called Ambush Corner in the Alabama Hills. And after the ambush, only one ranger remained, hence becoming the Lone Ranger. And this kind of really kicked off a golden era of the Alabama Hills. You know, all of the big guys came through here, whether it was John Wayne, Gene Autry, Hopalong Cassidy, you know, all of them came out here and really set the tone that continues today. But right here, back in 1938, there was guys on both of these rocks overlooking, kind of ambushing the Lone Ranger right here. And growing up, I used to just love the Lone Ranger. I would dress up like him for Halloween. I would just have a blast. And so it's cool to think, you know, I live in sight of where that all started, at least on film. You know, it was a radio show before that, but I think that this is a very cool place, and a place that, I don't know, I think anytime you spend the time to get to know the area better, you appreciate the area better, and it just kind of makes your life more fulfilled. And stumbling upon the fact that this character that I grew up just loving happened to kind of show up for the first time on the TV screen right here is really, really cool. It's cool to think that, man, coming up on 100 years, at least, you know, 80 something years ago, the actors were climbing up on these and ambushing the horse as it rode through here. I can see why they did it too. It's a very dramatic setting. It's very stunning, even for the Alabama Hills, kind of the chute straight through here. And I wonder if the local populations, the Paiute, the Shoshone, ever used this chute for hunting. You know, similar to how the Lone Ranger was hunted by the bad guys. This could be a chute to run some animals through and attack from above. So it's really beautiful out here, and I can't say it enough. If you've never had the opportunity to explore the Alabama Hills or to be out this part of California, definitely spend some time and go up 395. Check it out. You can see all of this history that's here. Cerro Gordo is just behind the rocks right over there. And it's very, very cool. And we're not quite done yet, because there's a scene that was shot in kind of the dusk that we're gonna go try to find. And this is a scene from one of my all-time favorite movies. Another blockbuster in the theaters that did over $400 million when it came out. And there's actually a new version of the movie just about to be released. And so with that, let's go hunting to see if we can find a historic movie in its own way. Back in 180 AD, the Roman general Maximus's family was brutally murdered because he wouldn't give his allegiance to Commodus, the insane son of the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. And so after his family is murdered, he makes the long trek home through the woods, through the desert, through the rocks, through right here in the Alabama hills. And I think it is just amazing that Ridley Scott, the director, chose to come all the way out here to shoot what was maybe 5 seconds in a 2.5 hour long video. You know, they were shooting in all these crazy locations like Malta, Morocco, and all these different places, but he thought, no, for that one shot, I had this vision of being right here. And it might have been because Ridley Scott shot G.I. Jane, and he shot some of that out here in the Alabama hills too, which is really cool. But being here is just exciting. You know, I love that type of movie. I love these epic dramas that are based upon history, and the fact that Russell Crowe rode his horse right here, it's cool, it's exciting. It just makes the whole thing seem more approachable, more manageable in a way, if that makes sense. I think that's the big lesson that I took away from this whole day of journeying around. You know, been living up at Cerro Gordo for years now, and I never took the time to visit these famous locations where they shot movies, even though I've been making videos for years. And I think being out here and being right where they shot a thing, I can understand where they put that 5 seconds of the movie together. You know, I know it was very difficult with a huge crew, but if you put enough of those 5 seconds together, then suddenly you have a movie. And I think that visiting the locations for me today made movies that typically you see all packaged up on the big screen that much more approachable. You know, there are people just out here with a camera setting up scene after scene after scene and weaving it together, and they have a movie. And I think by visiting all these locations today, I feel a better connection with this local area that is all around me. I am never gonna drive by this place again without thinking about Russell Crowe on his horse right here. And I feel a little bit ridiculous that it took me so long to get out here and check these locations out. And so I would say to all of you, I hope that you get out there and explore your local community around you. You know, go on Google, see what movies were filmed in your area, and go out and visit those places. You know, it's gonna make those places mean more to you. And if you do enough of that, your whole life will mean more. It'll kind of be like the world gets colored in all around you. And so that's what I got for this video. I very much appreciate you guys taking this journey with me today. If you're ever in the area, I very much encourage you to visit the Alabama Hills, to visit Cerro Gordo, and all the beautiful filming locations all around here. And until next time, I'm gonna sign out. I hope you guys have an amazing week. I hope you guys get out there, check out some famous locations around you, and I'll see you next time. For your consideration, the Jericho.